I am Isabel Guevara, Cambridge candidate number 3058, and I will be presenting my creative critical reflection on my film opening, Stolen Moments. Now, Stolen Moments is a romance/drama film, which, unlike is stereotypical of the romance drama, we aren't following our protagonists, Rachel here and Maria, falling in love and starting a relationship, but rather we're following their existing relationship and how they handle with mainly how society treats them as a lesbian couple. Now, a lot of this is based off my own experience, and I can tell you that when you have parents that don't want you around each other, often the places you will be able to find that space to be together is a park or somewhere outdoors in public. It fits into the stereotype of starting with these establishing nature shots for a romance film. Now, I also wanted to show through my framing how the characters feel. We have Rachel, she feels small, she feels that she's caged in. Then when Maria walks in, Maria is in this very beautiful light green background, whereas Rachel is up against this brown tree trunk looking off to the gate, showing how she feels closed in, as you can see through her posture as well. And this theme you'll see carries on. Here we see Maria talking, but we're focusing on Rachel's reactions. And again, we see that black gate keeping them in, and then we turn over to see Maria, and she is against this beautiful green background as she seems to be more open in this moment. Then the next scene in the school, I wanted to have very much the opposite feeling. I wanted it to be very harsh, very strict. You can see that through the harsh use of perspective and lines. And here we see how as the characters get closer, they're feeling good, they're feeling great, but they get smaller and smaller as they approach the teacher because things are about to go wrong. Again, we see the teacher standing in the middle, separating them both through the framing and seeing how that affects their relationship through their hands. Again, we have different framing here, basically a split screen. Rachel's looking up, Maria is looking down, showing their different personalities in this moment. And of course, then switching over to Maria's perspective, I had to do a lot of funny work with being able to create camera movements through animation. I basically had to draw out this whole background beforehand and then zoom in, move the images through the frames, and then redraw my lines so that they could keep the same thickness. And then in animation, what you have to do when you're zooming in, you have to add details. As you can see here, this eye goes from very rudimentary to very detailed, and that is because we're getting closer, we will see more detail. But a very hard part is being able to keep it from looking off or looking too goofy, depending on what character you have. So here for the teacher, we have these very rotten, very pale colors. Then we switch to our protagonists, and they both have very warm colors going on. Big eyes, clear expression. And whereas here, we don't even have a reflection on the eye. And then moving on to Maria's perspective, we see a lot of shifting of the frame, how she can't keep focus. You'll see that it becomes blurred. And this is a technique that I had to learn as I was doing this. I had a vague idea of what I was doing, but this was very experimental for me. And we zoom away as they feel smaller and smaller and smaller, and the hallway is alone, showing that they've not just been attacked emotionally, but now it's also affecting their lives and that now they are going to be late to class. Conflicts like this would ideally become more and more intense as the film goes on. Now again, with this outside framing, we still see the gate, we still see the tree, causing the separation between the two, which is only broken when Maria reaches to Rachel rather than Rachel reaching out to Maria. Now, throughout the film, I wanted to make it very clear that I was trying to tackle the subject of how queer couples have to deal with society and how we abuse them and how that itself can affect our relationships. As the main idea here is that Maria and Rachel would be perfectly happy if the world just accepted them as they are. Through some cut lines of dialogue due to time, Maria explains how her dad does not like this at all and that she cannot get in trouble at school as she, being of South Asian descent, as you can see through her race, would have to face severe consequences. And meanwhile, Rachel, who is Latina like me, also has to face her own issues with that, how it's ingrained in your mind that this is wrong, or that you just want to live your life as you are. Both of these things come from experiences between me and my partner. So I'd like to think that I was able to represent this in a respectful manner, not bringing too much attention to race itself, but still considering it as a factor. Now, in order to distribute this, I was thinking, since it's more of a debut indie film, it would go on a platform where it could be discovered, such as YouTube, and sharing it through social media, such as Instagram and subreddits. The good thing with subreddits is that I could specifically target queer spaces through subreddits, and with Instagram, I could use hashtags and advertisement in order to get it out there and get people to see it. And ideally, it would serve as a taste of what could be done to then bring in more people and in turn bring in more funding to be able to create bigger, better projects. Now, you'll see here that I used Procreate in order to make the animation and the drawings themselves. And Procreate, I have been using it for a long time for illustration, but I've never used it for animation. So this was a very big learning curve for me. I had to learn the basics of animation and how it works. And while a lot of this is more of an animatic than animation itself, it still taught me quite a bit. I had to learn, how am I going to make my outline? So what do I want to change? You'll see here that there's a lot of changing of elements, but it's essentially the same picture to give it that sense of motion and life, which took quite a bit of time, but I believe was worth it. Things like how long to hold a frame. As you can see here, these are my hold frames, how long a picture will hold on for. And one thing that was very crucial to learn was the coloring. As you will see here, the beginning is all black and white, black and white, black and white, as I have to get my animation and get everything down first, and then I am adding color. And adding color was quite the issue, because when you want to add a layer on Procreate, it's normally fine. But if you're doing an animation, adding a layer shows up as a frame, and if you want to put these two together into a group so that they'll show up as one frame, it kills your whole frames. So you'll see me having to do a lot of going in and putting numbers on different frames. Here you see a 5, and later on I think there's a 2, a 15, because that's me trying to make sure that I keep the same spacing between things. And even then, one mistake that I do believe I made was that I should have had my lines and my sound stuff, or at least most of it, done beforehand so that I could sync up my characters to their voices, so that way I wouldn't have to run into the problem of having to cut some dialogue, as I said. However, that is a learning experience, and I'm still very proud of how this turned out. As you can see, I had to learn quite a lot, even here in iMovie, with finding where the sound effects were, how to manage audio, and then having to create several projects to keep adding in different sounds. As you can see, this here is the voice acting from my side before I sent it off to my partner, and she did the voicing for Maria. And that can be seen here in the final project. So I'd say that this was a very large learning experience for me and has really opened doors for me in animation, which is something that I've always wanted to get into, but I never had something to push me the way this did. And I hope that this is the start of a great journey into the wonders of animation, and that I can tell many more stories and help many more people with what I can create.